Good evening. Hi, everybody. I'm Stasha Brandon, the Literature and Humanities Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. As we begin today, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. These are the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people. We honor their elders, past and present, and thank them for the stewardship of this land. Welcome to the final installment in our five-part series, Growing Up, a literary series about growing pains, curated by D.A. Novoti and presented in partnership with Open Books, a poem emporium. We're grateful to our author series sponsors, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, and the Seattle Times for generous support of library programs. Thank you as well to the Seattle Public Library Foundation. Private gifts to the foundation from thousands of donors help the library provide free programs and services that touch the lives of everyone in our community. I also wanted to give a shout out to our partners over at Open Books. They're one of what I think are just two poetry only bookstores in the United States, and we're so lucky to have them here in Seattle. And we've popped a link to their store in the chat below. After tonight's program, we're interested in hearing from you. We'll post a link to a program survey in the chat as well. We'd appreciate it if you took a minute after the event to fill that out. We'd love to hear what you think. Now I'm delighted to welcome D.A. Novoti, the curator for this series, who will introduce tonight's event. D.A. Novoti is a member of the Gila River Indian community and a nonfiction and poetic prose writer. His work has appeared in Homology Lit, Spartan, Indian Country Today, Cloudthroat, and elsewhere. He produces the literary series We the Indigenous and co-created Fight for Our Lives, a reading series supporting communities targeted by divisive politics. He is a 2020 Radical Imagination Grant recipient from the NDN Collective and was a 2020 City Artist from the City of Seattle's Office of Arts and Culture. Please welcome D.A. Novoti.
Great. Thank you so much, Sesha, for that warm welcome, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for the last in the series of Growing Up, again, a literary series about growing pains. So this series began with understanding what it means to be a young person. We collaborated with Seattle Arts and Lectures Youth Poet Laureate Program and then Youth Speaks Seattle. Then we were delighted to hear from writers as we honored parents, step-parents, chosen parents, and caregivers for a special Mother's Day event, followed by a Father's Day event. And tonight, our theme is focused on the so-called third act of life called adulthood. And so what is there to say about adulthood? Well, there's actually quite a lot. John Connolly, for instance, in the Book of Lost Things, writes, "For in every adult there dwells the child that was, and in every child there lies the adult that will be." Maya Angelou continues this conversation in saying, "I am convinced that most people do not grow up. We marry and dare to have children and call that growing up. I think what we do is mostly grow old. We carry accumulation of years in our bodies and on our faces, but generally our real selves, the children inside, are innocent and shy as magnolias." And then lastly, Brian White shares, "People never grow up. They just learn how to act in public." So adulthood, of course, is a vast ocean. And if we're lucky enough, we're able to sail through the rough seas end to end. And with us tonight are some brilliant writers who will walk us through adulthood from kind of their point of view. And when I say adulthood, it's from the simple to the complicated moments, from the easy to the difficult, and from the celebrating life choices to long held regrets. So everyone cozy up, grab some snacks, a beverage, perhaps an adult beverage, since that's our theme tonight, and let's dive in. So my first writer I'm really excited to introduce is Gabrielle Bates. Gabrielle Bates is a Southern writer currently living in Seattle, where she works for Open Books, a poem emporium, and co-hosts the podcast, The Poet Salon. Her poems have appeared in The New Yorker, Poetry Magazine, Plowshares, American Poetry Review, and The Offling, among other journals, and her debut collection, Judas Goat, was recently named a finalist for the Bergman Prize. Everyone, please welcome Gabrielle Bates.
Hi, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here. It's really good to see some gorgeous, familiar faces that I haven't gotten to see in a minute. I just got back at like 1 a.m. this morning from my hometown, Birmingham, Alabama. And so my relationship to that place and memories from my childhood and adolescence in that place is very much with me and on my heart today. So I thought I would start with this poem inspired by the little area called Homewood, where I went to high school. And after all, so much of being an adult is having the perspective and language to think about those earlier phases of life. So much of being an adult for me has been grappling with childhood and adolescence. So you'll hear a good bit about that in my poems this evening. This first poem is called Strawberries. A car's tires thunk over the rubbery black tripwire at the oil change, triggering a fat bell. And a group of girls in silver leotards are reflected like spatters of sap in its windows, liquidine, firm, gleaming. It's a game day. They are the girls chosen to do the splits in tempo to the brass band. Heel of a front foot sliding over astroturf, top of a back foot grinding over lit green, cervix slapping the 50-yard line like a fried egg flipped down on a griddle to burn. Behind the bleachers, a boy takes off the shirt of another boy, paints a letter there in red paint, R, and then another boy, I, O, T. When the sun goes down over the ridge, all the painted boys will make patriots. For now, the sun rises, sanctioning the street. Jiffy Lube, pet store, the Sam's super sandwiches teens file into, practicing the joke of language. The morning is cool on the outside and hot in the restaurant. The war in the words, playful as a war can be, meaning each gut bleeds out like a slit pig's, filling the cracks in linoleum, spilling over, becoming smooth. The layers of red dry and build on one another. And for years, the gap between ceiling and floor lessens. Backs hunch as the mind saws downward, revealing rings. In the parking lot, are you asleep? Says the boy who is not my boyfriend, running his fingers along the band of my underwear. Across the street from this, for years, an ancient tortoise roams the floor of the pet store, closing his army green beak around the red toenails of sandaled women, thinking them strawberries. I feel ashamed for all the moments I've been kind, knowing kindness is all it would take. Like many people who grew up in a religious community of some sort, my growing up involved wrestling with the distance between what religious texts and authorities told me I should desire and what I really desired. And one way this manifested itself in my life was a recurring dream I had starting from when I was about 8 years old, in which I was basically chosen by God to be the next Mary and impregnated. Needless to say, I felt a really intense mixture of emotions about this dream, and poetry is a form I'm so grateful to be able to turn to now as an adult to engage with that sort of intensity that at the time I didn't have the ability to do. So here's the poem. Conversation with Mary. What language did the angel speak? My most private language. Was the angel fluent? Nuances were lost. Where did the angel come from? The ground. Did you consider yourself a woman or a child before this? Yes. And after? Yes. What was the tenor of your joy then? Choiceless. Did it hurt? Forever. Did you feel rewarded? I was. How did it feel? Cold blood on the cock of God. Whose blood? My blood. This next poem continues the theme of haunting and disentanglement as part of growing up, I think. It's called The Mentor. He carved faces into the dead parts of cedars. He wore a belt of chisels around his waist. To determine where they were dead, he took a leafless limb, followed it like thread back to its spool, down the corresponding strip of trunk. In the middle of those woods, where the ground sloped into a large bowl, mist often got trapped, parted at our calves. We walked together for a long time, and as we walked, he traced what I said back to my left breast, down to the tender hole where I was once attached to my mother until I went silent. Then he braced my back against a tree. He took out a chisel and kneeled. You ask when I stopped shouting everything and started keeping language close to my mouth, as if I were reading to a match that had to last my life. Well, it was not that day. That was much later, after the trees had all been cleared and the earth leveled. When I stopped begging to be believed and started telling the truth, no man was there. Speaking of no men being there, it's Pride Month, as we're recording this at least. And I wanted to read this poem that was published this year that very much dives back into some early grapplings with queerness, which I kept very hush-hush for a long time, and I'm very grateful to be not as hush-hush about anymore. It's called Intro to Theater. I can remember one particular time in her grandparents' attic, her legs slightly older than mine, shaved amphibian smooth, her breath around my face like an evaporated puddle. Naked or almost in semi-darkness, her blue eyes dusk. We wouldn't allow our mouths to touch. She'd hold her hand over mine and tongue her own knuckles. Each time was the last time until the real last time, which felt more like a beginning. Earth on the third day, alluvium, swamp lily, wax myrtle, rose mallow. Adam would kiss me in a similar way not long after, as part of the school play, using his thumb to make a barrier between our lips, and all our classmates would watch us. I was bleeding from my center. I remember the moment his hand made contact with my face, risking to smear a forgettable line's blue ink on my cheek. So much time passed between the kiss and the ending. I remember thinking it seemed like the applause was for our deaths. Okay, this next one will be my last poem. Thank you so much, DA and Seattle Public Library, for having us here. It's such an honor to get to do an event with these literary heroes, some of whom are my neighbors here in Seattle. I feel really lucky to get to be in a constellation with y'all. It's called "And Even After All That, No Epiphany." Pubic hairs float up the strata of my bath, and I remember being confident I was going to be a good mother of many children. When a boyfriend said, "I want a big, loud family," I lied and said, "Same." A friend said to me once, "I'm good at sex. That doesn't mean I should be a prostitute." And I began reconsidering a lot of things. Cows, mostly, but also tax evasion. A child in my charge wrapped my hair around her fists like boxing gauze. I let her. This was maternal as hell. If I shaved my head, you'd see that baby's grip burned among the stubble like a brand. Don't question the farm where you were born, why it was there, why it belonged to an oral surgeon. Every MD in Alabama owns farmland for tax write-off purposes. Buy a cow, sell a cow, keep it legit. It helps if you can get a cheap hand. Find a young father with an infant daughter and nowhere to live. Give them rent of the property shack, kudzu lapping the sides all night like a tide pulled up by the moon. No need to grow anything. The cows are few and only need to survive. You won't be the first to be disturbed by what you find or don't in a bovine's eyes. My father climbed ladders, pitched hay down into truck beds, and it fell unlike snow, shot up a shadow when it landed. Lately, I've been reading a lot in the bath about two women who are friends. Power pours from one to the next. There is only so much, and it can only be shared, one up, one down. How simple and clean. The opposite, in my experience, of becoming a person, which I like. I like it the way back in school I liked grinding, which everyone but me suddenly seemed sexually comfortable enough one winter to be into, mostly in hot, dark garages. I went to the parties and stood at the edge eating stumpy little carrots. People thought I was judging them, but actually I was just trying to figure out how to be sexy without bringing my body into it. Parents didn't want to know what was happening with us, and neither, frankly, did I, but I felt I had to, watching a boy hold a girl's pelvis to his, swinging her limp form back and forth, offbeat in the dark before him. They looked like an ear of corn somebody gave up trying to shuck after peeling back one husk leaf, the leaf at the mercy of the shank. When a friend says over the phone, "You got the life I expected to get and I got yours," I think we're appreciating irony, so I laugh. I often laugh when I'm in charge of sharing bad news, i.e. we, haha, had to put our dog to sleep. Boyfriend, sometimes I consider driving into oncoming traffic. Me, Ha 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 ha. In the book, both friends hope and fear they are the more intelligent. They love the same man and have daughters by the sea. We were sitting on her blue couch the day before tax day, and she said, my womb aches for a baby. And laughing, I said, like, literally? And she said, yes, very suspiciously, as if she'd just discovered I might be an eel. I see them at the beach, sneakily studying each other's stomachs when they flip a page. God bless the IUD, that little white anchor with its little white string. 3 years is a long time to be upside down eating semen. Later, I'll walk an hour to the bookstore and my boss's kids will be there in the back. One boy, one girl, watching me. Thank you.
Everyone, please give a round of applause for Gabrielle Bates. Oh my goodness. Before you go, Gabby, I do have a question, but let the words sink in. And for the audience, if you want to read more of Gabrielle Bates's work, she had a poem recently published in the New Yorker in May 2021. Congrats. And that poem is titled In the Dream in Which I Am a Widow. Fantastic, fantastic. So your poem just brought up a lot of nostalgia for me, like just thematically was woven in lots of your work that you read for us tonight. And when I say nostalgia, I'm thinking of the actual German translation, which I'm not going to even try to pronounce. I will butcher that word, but it's nostalgia in the German sense is yearning and desiring. And there's actually a lot of psychological work based on nostalgia. And I'm just, for whatever reason, nerd out on these things. But part of the psychologist's understanding of nostalgia is that there's this utopian conceptions of our ideal development, whether that development is physical, mental, emotional, other traits of nostalgia is that there's a sense of incompleteness or imperfections we have about our lives. Of course, bittersweet emotions, and there's tons of reflection and evaluation of one's life. And then of course, symbolic richness, which you were just like hitting all those boxes as you were reading. Therefore, I need to ask this, and you are still fresh from your Alabama trip to your home sweet home. So I need to ask, is nostalgia to be trusted?
Ooh, is nostalgia to be trusted? Well, I guess I wonder why we would need to ask that question. Like, why do I need to trust it in order to write about it? Is there truth in nostalgia? Probably some. I tend to think there's, something true in just about anything if you look at it long enough or describe it long enough or think about it long enough. But I don't know, I love that question. I love thinking about nostalgia in relation to incompleteness and desire, because that feels so much more right than the idea of nostalgia as this idealized, romanticized, false past, which feels really dangerous for obvious reasons. But I think what drives so many of us to poetry and probably writing of all kinds is a yearning or desire or feeling of incompleteness. And I think a lot about the role of fragments in so many poems, and think about Sappho's fragments that we are able to read now in some translations by like Anne Carson that are so much about queer desire in that fragmented state. Like, is that nostalgia? I don't know. I'd love to see an argument for that. And I'm excited to nerd out after this on the German meaning of the word. I love that.
Oh my gosh, yes, you're describing all the questions that I always have, hence why I love studying on just what the meaning of that word and its context. And so that was my question. And then I actually have one more question for you, and that is, from your recent trip back home, what did you learn about yourself?
Ooh, What did I learn about myself on my recent trip? Hmm. Well, and I don't know if this is so much what I've learned about myself or about the world or about my family. I think those things have a way of getting really entangled when you are among them for a concentrated period of time. Um, but I was spending a lot of time with aging grandparents, one of which is very much dying and is in some really late stage dementia. And dementia is something I've feared for a long time, just, for whatever reasons we have our fears as young people, even though it was so far in the distance for me, it was just something that really terrified me. This idea of losing memory and being at the mercy of the total present, which, it's funny, people talk about like how great it would be to just like be able to fully live in the present. You hear that all the time. And then you are hanging out with someone with dementia who is living in the total present, and it is a nightmare. It's a total nightmare. And so I've been wrestling a lot with that, with my twinned impulse to want to very much live in the present and be a creature that does that, and reckoning with how much context matters to us as human beings, and how important a sense of the past and the future can be. So I guess that's something I'm newly grappling with and thinking about in light of my recent trip.
Whew, we went deep, y'all.
I know, I don't know how to do it any other way. I just gotta go.
That's hashtag adulting and a perfect just framing for the theme of this series and for this event. So thank you so much, Gabrielle, and everyone, please give another round of applause for Gabrielle Bates. Hurrah. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
All righty. So we're moving forward with our next reader this evening, and I'm really excited to introduce Matilda Bernstein Sycamore, who is the author of 2 nonfiction titles and 3 novels, and the editor of 5 nonfiction anthologies. Her new book, The Freezer Door, is a New York Times Editor's Choice, one of Oprah Magazine's best LGBTQ books of 2020. Amazing. And a finalist for the 2021 Penn Genestein Book Award and a Lambda Literary Award. Her first memoir, The End of San Francisco, won a Lambda Literary Award, and her 6th anthology, Between Certain Death and a Possible Future, Queer Writing on Growing Up with the AIDS Crisis, will be out in October. Sycamore lives in Seattle, and everyone, please welcome Matilda Bernstein Sycamore.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here for this evening. And these readings so far have been amazing. So I'm just going to read the beginning of the book I'm working on now. It's called Touching the Art. It won't be out until 2023. So you get a very early preview. I'm 6 years old, wearing a yellow sweater and a long pink scarf that goes past my waist, the tassels blowing in the wind. I stand very still inside a white rectangle on the left side of the painting, next to cartoonish flowers as big as my head that float in a dense green that covers half the canvas. There's a tulip growing toward my hand from the white ground, but I do not look happy. Somehow, I never realized this until now. This painting was in my grandfather's bedroom, the room that became mine when I visited. So it kept me company. Did I always just look at the flowers and colors and recognize the figure on the left as me and find this comforting? In that room, I was still afraid of the dark. There were still monsters in the blankets, but when I look at this painting now, I can tell that my grandmother actually saw me when she painted it. My mouth is a straight line across, eyes blurred into something like panic. I'm staring ahead, but my whole body looks frozen. I'm there, and yet I'm not there at all. I'm not saying Gladys meant to paint all of this. I'm just saying she was painting honestly. When you allow your work to express what you see, sometimes your work expresses more than you know. When she painted me again at age 12, long eyelashes emphasize my femininity. Here I have softer features, hints of a nose and lips, my hand reaching into paper collaged onto the canvas. The painting is saturated in blues like I'm in the sky or the water, but also I'm grounded by what I'm holding on to, these words. What do they say? The way my shirt becomes a collage, but also everything is fluid. Even in the brightness of my gaze, I'm holding on with a stoicism that I didn't realize she recognized. The relationship we have through her art, through the process of making art. So I remember those seashell wind chimes and when one broke, and that's how she decided to use them in her paperworks. She would take me and my sister to the Button Factory. That's what she called it, a store in downtown Baltimore on a street of old buildings. Was it Calvert Street or Charles? It wasn't a large storefront, but I remember huge containers filled with buttons near the entrance. A scoop was 25 cents, or you could fill a lunch bag for $1, something like that. It took me so long to decide on those buttons because I would find a single one that felt like treasure, a gold filigree or a brass tableau or astonishing matte chartreuse. Everything was art. This was what I learned from Gladys. There's art in a frame, but also there's the frame of art. You put it on a black background, on a white background, on a background of color, a touch of color or the color of touch. When you hold it up in the air, you realize how strong it is. This handmade paperwork of so many delicate layers. You hold it up to the light or you place it down under the light. There's what the art does and there's what the art does to you. When I was a kid, Gladys encouraged everything that made me different. My sensitivity, creativity, softness, femininity, introspection. She was an abstract artist and she wanted to set me free. That's what it felt like. Once, my other grandmother bought me an instructional book on how to draw an airplane. And when I drew an airplane, just like the book told me to, Gladys was horrified. I can't remember any other crime I committed as a child in her eyes. As an adult, the standards changed. And that's one of the things I'm trying to understand here. But even when I visited her after moving to San Francisco at age 19, ready to claim queerness with my body, she was ready to photograph it. Here I am with purple and green hair, standing in front of the painting where she reproduced part of a poem I wrote in high school. I'm looking at the camera like nothing can touch me. Did Gladys say, "You look like a hustler"? Something like that. But also she photographed me with my shirt off. And I can't find the exact photos I'm looking for, or maybe they don't exist, not in the way I remember. The hustler pose must be this one where I'm leaning shirtless against the wall, hips pushed forward. But the pose from behind must have been Gladys's idea. I'm reaching up the white studio wall designed with pegboard to hang her paintings for viewing. The white wall emphasizing my painted nails, a chainmail bracelet on the left wrist, a silver phone cord wrapped around my right, green and black polyester plaid pants, combat boots. At least half of these photos are out of focus, but Gladys was always looking for the glorious mistake, the perfect error. How a broken circle is still a circle. How there can be so much motion in something so still. So much depth of field and neutrals, such an individuality between the two sides of this paperwork. And so they pull you together. But also a hole ripped into the bottom right of the piece, an invitation to see the whole. A whole is greater than the parts. That's what they say. But Gladys also knew that a whole could be greater. Nothing teaches more than absence. And if I'm feeling her absence now, I'm feeling present. My pale skin in these photos, afraid of the sun in San Francisco, I would cross the street to reach shade. Gladys, too, was afraid of the sun on her skin, but surely not the light. How a photo of a person in front of a painting can either be a photo of a person or a photo of a painting. Can it be both? In this photo, my green hair melds into the blue-green of one of Gladys's Emotional Squares paintings, and the blue in the painting brings out the blue in my eyes. Between person and painting, between person and person. Or I'm dancing for the camera in several shots, and one of them is just a blur of green and blue and gray, and Gladys's thumb in the frame. Here we are together. I'm moving between wanting to hold this person that was myself and wanting to see this painting again. All the vulnerability, even when I'm projecting invulnerability. But can I tell you something else? When I was looking through my file cabinet to find these photos, I found a set of photos an acquaintance took about 5 years later in Seattle in '97. In those photos, I'm shirtless too because the photographer requested it. And my hair is blue blending into pink and then shaped into perfect curls and swirls. But here's what I noticed. The return address on the envelope that contains these photos, it's the same building where I live now. So Amy Rossman, who took these photos, lived just 2 floors down and 1 apartment over, but I had no idea. Coincidence doesn't always tell us about history, but history always tells us about coincidence. Suddenly, I'm remembering the trip when Gladys took these photos. I think I was in Baltimore for 10 days, which was the longest I'd ever stayed there. I went downtown one night and found an open mic at a cafe. And did I read something there? Or did I just think about reading something? I remember sitting in the park by the Washington Monument, which was right near the cafe and also near the Walters Art Gallery, a landmark I knew from Gladys, and some cute boy came up to me. He said he went to MICA, and I didn't know what MICA was. Oh, the Maryland Institute College of Art. Actually, that was the art school where Gladys once taught, when it was just known as the Maryland Institute in the 60s. She was the first person hired to teach abstract painting there. Anyway, this guy started talking to me in the park by the Washington Monument, right near a gallery on Charles Street where I went to a show of Gladys's collages in the 80s. It was one of those moments that could have become a hookup, especially when he told me about the porn shop nearby. But then maybe it didn't become a hookup because we talked for too long. I mean, I couldn't tell what he wanted. And I didn't know how to make it into what I wanted because I wanted to talk. I would have talked more. It's funny how I can start thinking about a conversation with a random guy I met in a park 25 years ago and still regret that I didn't get to know him more. I want to let go of the need to describe the art and instead describe the sensation, the mood, the shaping of emotion. But also I need to say something about how an oil pastel drawing is embedded in this paperwork. It's just a small part of the piece, but you can't look away because the colors are so vibrant. The frame is always important in Gladys's art. Not the frame around the art, but the frames within. I want to say something about the texture of this paper she made, how it's even but coarse, and there are so many textures within. Your fingers tell a different story than your eyes. When I was a kid, everyone in my family said I'd inherited Gladys's visual sense. The way the loop of the string pulls your eyes up, the movement of eyes versus the movement of texture and color and sensation, the brightness of a color, yellow, and how that can pull you off the page. How I say the page, but I mean the artwork. What does it mean to inherit a sense? The way the arc of the brown pulls the straw through the paper, the motion of the hand, Gladys's hand. If I make this motion now, it feels like anger. But if I do it slower, then it feels like a welcome. Art is never just art. It is a history of feeling, a gap between sensations, a safety valve, an escape hatch, a sudden shift in the body, a clipboard full of flowers, a welcome mat flipped over and back, over and back. Welcome. How Gladys wanted to use her hands so much that toward the end of her life, when she kept falling and hurting her hands, still she would try to get up those steep stairs to her studio to make more art. Maybe this is a story of obsession. Maybe this is a story about love. Maybe this is a story of breathing. But actually, they didn't just say I'd inherited Gladys's visual sense. It was her sense of taste. Everyone said it. Sometimes it could be a question. How come you were the one who inherited her taste? But it was also always the answer. As if taste was something you could inherit. As if it was even taste we were talking about. If art is a structure of feeling, it's also a feeling of lack. The paradox in writing about someone who's dead is that then they feel more alive. You want to call her up and say, listen, I'm writing about you. I have some questions. In this light, how all the browns become pink. Suddenly I see the blue at the top corner and oh, how is that even attached? If the self is always a collaborative project, Gladys gave me what I needed as a child. This I know. What changed as I came into myself is one of the things I'm trying to figure out. How it changed and why. Because if I look at these pictures Gladys took of me when I was 19, I can see the way we're collaborating. I remember her commenting on my hair, how she thought it was interesting. She liked my earrings, except the largest one that was like a horn. And in the photo where she asked me to reach my hands up against the wall from behind with my shirt off, the emphasis goes to my thumbnails painted black and the bracelets around my bare arms. We're making art together with my body. The dynamic between thinking about art and creating it, experiencing art in the everyday. Like you're walking down the street and you look up at the way the light hits those vines that cover the side of that building. Or when the vines start to change color, reds and greens and browns. Or when you go back by that building one night and you look up and the vines are gone. And now all you can see are the marks in the paint where they once were. Which one of these means the most depends on what you're looking for. The way there's the art and its history. And then there's Gladys's history in creating the art. And then there's my history in witnessing and imagining her creation. And then there's this creation now. Thank you.
It needs to be 2023 so we can actually read this book in our hands. Oh my gosh, Matilda. Well, first of all, let's give a round of applause to Matilda. Brava. I'm just reading from your website, Touching the Art, which you just read, gave us a sneak preview of, about your fraught relationship with your late grandmother, a visual artist from Baltimore. And you just pulled me in your description of the Button Factory, and you're talking about that would take you so long to decide the buttons because you saw them as treasure and you were holding them up to the light. And I was just, again, so pulled into kind of my own upbringing and toys and things I would carefully look at and observe and what have you. And I'm wondering to know, flash forward to 2021, what's the adult treasure for you that, as you wrote again, that you hold up to the light to observe? Is there anything that you value or you take time to really, I guess, look at carefully?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think maybe it's, well, okay, so first I'll say that I still look at everything. So every little detail of everything. Like I would still, if someone took me and was like, here's a bin of buttons, choose a bag full, I'd be like, oh my God, how am I gonna decide? So I would still have that mentality. And I think in those moments are the moments when I feel most alive. So, but I think the adult treasure maybe is the interactions with people on the street, in public. That sudden kind of intimacy that can change everything when it happens, and the loss of that due to people's inability to, or refusal, I should say, refusal to actually embrace that spontaneity or the impact of living together in the same city, right? Especially in Seattle, right? Of course, that's a lot of what The Freezer Door, my most recent book, is about. But so I think, it's those interactions I treasure. And I also think it is the light still. So it's like the light on the buildings, or I guess also sensation, like leaning against a tree and feeling my body give way and like sink into that. And maybe also, well, I guess I think writing also probably fits into that category, and so I guess I could just keep going. But I think I treasure, in a certain way, I treasure anything that can get me through the trauma of the everyday and through the trauma of my childhood into a place of deep sensory presence, and also a feeling of possibility and connection to a communal possibility of existing together in this world.
Oh, I love that. And it's just such a wisdom sharing that being open to the possibilities of people is definitely helpful in processing our own traumas and our stress and so forth. And I'm wondering, my next question I have for you is, was so excited to hear about you in San Francisco at 19 years of age, and I wish I could get a time machine and go to San Francisco and hang out with you back then. How cool would that be? And I know there's this cliche question about, what advice would you give to your younger self, which, meh, and I want to put a spin on that. And that is, I want to know what advice 19-year-old Matilda in San Francisco would give to 2021 Matilda in Seattle. So let's just pretend that instead of my face, 19-year-old Matilda just pops up, boom. Hey, 2021 Matilda, I have some advice for you, and here it is. I'm curious to hear what you think 19-year-old Matilda would say.
Oh, I love that. I would say, don't even stop. Those fuckers who look at you like they want you to die just for existing in the world, they don't matter. Don't even look at them. Don't imagine even ever, like they are not acknowledging your humanity. Don't acknowledge that they exist. Walk down the street like no one can touch you, and they can't. That would be my 19-year-old advice to myself now.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that. And again, just thank you so much for this sneak preview. Again, I can't wait for 2023, touching the arts. And everyone, please check out Matilda's work, including the recent book, The Freezer Door. It's just such an amazing work and just a voice that you have. So again, thank you so much for joining us, Matilda. And everyone give another round of applause for Matilda Bernstein Sycamore. Bravo.
Oh, thank you so much for including me in this wonderful series.
Yeah, thank you so much. Awesome. Wow. Whew. All right. We're moving forward to our next reader, and excited to introduce Raul Sanchez, who is the current City of Redmond Poet Laureate. So yes, really excited. Raul Sanchez teaches poetry in Spanish through the Seattle Arts and Lectures WITS program, also through the Jack Straw Educational Project. In the last 3 years, he volunteered for Pongo teen writing at the Juvenile Detention Center. Recently, he translated Ellen Ziegler's book of the Museum of Antique Mexican Toys located in Mexico City. His forthcoming second collection, When There Were No Borders, will be released spring 2021 from Flowers Songbooks, McAllen, Texas. Everyone, please welcome Raul Sanchez.
Well, let me change this to speaker view. Gallery. There I am. Hi, thank you, DA, for inviting me, and thank you for all the readers. Matilda, I love what you just shared with us. Gabriel, amazing as always. You got me thinking about a lot of things. And indeed, the growing up when you're from somewhere else, trying to make your life somewhere else, and learning other cultures and other traditions, it becomes a doorway through a path that has a lot of surprises and a lot of unknowns. Because when I was 12 or so, my father passed away, and you'll hear about all that here in the poems I'm going to share with you. So I'd like to begin with this poem, which actually it's been published bilingually in the anthology in Xochitl in Cuicatl, which is been published from Madrid. And it's a book about an inch and a half thick. So there's a lot of local people and poets and from this area and from other parts. And it was edited by the professor, Dr. Gabriela Gutierrez Simus. Okay, my father was a bracero. I know this. My father was a bracero. I hold his contract. Yellow paper full of restrictions and prohibitions. His pay stub, not enough to survive. I wonder what he had to endure. I wonder if the DDT sprayed on his face over the years contributed to his ailments, diabetes, asthma, the cerebral embolism that blinded him, laying railroad tracks, expanding commerce routes from Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. My father's dried sweat merged with that soil under a burning sun, another nail on the ties. He went back to Mexico, Tenochtitlan, started a restaurant so he could send me to a private American school. He wanted me to learn their language, to live way north across the borderline. He didn't want me to live by my strong back, my strong arms, but by my words. And this is a tribute to him. So we're talking about nostalgia. And that is a very interesting topic because I think that is what drives us and me many times to think about the things the way they were and how they could be, and also our regrets and lamentations for the things we couldn't do or experience. And this is from the my time at the Jack Straw Writers Program in 2014. I'm just going to read you an excerpt of that. I begin in 1963. One day I walked out of the restaurant without saying a word, not to Grandma, or the waiter at hand. Sexy Betty Boop always blowing kisses, and my buddy Felix the cat, black and white, the time of the most memorable spanking I ever had. The German girl in the building next door invited me to her place to watch cartoons like a playdate, you know. We watched many, but mainly Felix the cat. Later, I got hungry, left the place, and walked out. Once on the sidewalk, I turned right where the restaurant was, saw my mom, dad, grandma, and four cops looking at me. My father grabbed my hand, mumbled something I do not recall, but in anger and relief, took me to the back of the restaurant, took off his belt, pulled my pants down, folded leather belt, hitting my butt cheeks left and right while he cried, "Don't you ever leave the house without telling us where you're going." End quote. 1967. Before my father passed away, my mother and his mother never got along. We all lived together. That was bad chemistry. News of his advanced diabetes came to our ears. I saw him on his deathbed, his eyes bandaged over at Hospital General. He grabbed my hand with his left hand. I uttered, I uttered my name. He replied, "Who are you?" While he held my hand, I said, "I am Raul, your son." And he replied, "I love you, my son." I got whisked away. The last time I didn't see him was at his funeral. Therefore, I had to learn everything else my father should have taught me on my own. 1970. I slammed my way through the 70s. Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze, Tripod and Bacardi rum, fire, free and careless, hippie adventure in Avandaro, cold, wet, hungry, rocking and rolling, smoking, a good time, safe time for freedom to begin the beginning of hard times. 1972. A new revolutionary attitude born. Mao Zedong's red book in my shirt pocket. The idealist in me didn't know the depth of the Cultural Revolution. I did not embrace. I took what I liked, took it to the streets, along with my comrades, student rebels. We idolized Che Guevara. We marched when Salvador Allende was assassinated by Pinochet, the CIA's puppet. And there's more to that. And that's an attempt to create a memoir in decimas, meaning 10 lines, not quite like a sonnet, but just 10 lines specific. Almost like the book by Marilyn Nelson, that she has 14 lines in her poems. And I like that. So nostalgia, here's this. You'll hear a lot of it. No need to explain. Television. Leading age baby boomers like me witness histories perpetually in black and white. Television had everything I didn't know, but I saw it because it was there. Merry melodies and merry tunes, Betty Boop and Felix the Cat, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, and Elmer Fudd. My young mind numbed with illusion. I saw John F. Kennedy shot over and over, his head rocking back and forth. I saw black athletes raise their black fists to protest racism in America. I saw Vietnam War soldiers spat on their face. Television had everything I didn't know. I saw Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, MLK Jr. and John Lewis beaten across the bridge. I saw anti-war protesters mistreated, Kent State students shot to death. I saw Pelé win the World Cup, bullfighters dead on the arena. I saw the St. Louis Cardinals win the World Series. Television had everything I needed to know. I saw Salvador Allende killed by the CIA, Sandinistas fighting against Somoza. I saw Fidel Castro tumble Fulgencio Batista, Mexican activists killed in the mountains of Guerrero. I saw students massacred in Tlatelolco Square, Diaz Ordaz's dirty war against El Pueblo. I saw everything I know, 65 years ago, still latent, infanticized. Today I continue to raise my fist. I protest. I demand, I proclaim equality, respect for others, for the land, demanding respect for the working class. I saw it all that made me who I am. And that says a lot about my approach to helping the kids in schools to learn what they need to learn, introduce them to poetry, because it's the best way for us to release and bring back all those memories and nostalgias that we carry within. Next poem, it's titled 2 Hours, has a little bit of that and other memories. 2 hours. I stole 2 hours from a day I don't remember, nor the weekend, month, or year, but I did it. It was the day when I put the early bird songs in my pocket after listening to the sound of young ladies clicking heels and castanets with amorous echoes nailed down to the soulless songs sung by drunken patrons. The restaurant my father owned, where the jaguars don't stop, nor the wounded beggars, or matadors, nor the condors descending from the Andes beyond their peaks. I stole 2 hours and filled them with roses and words and sentiment and metaphor, rhyme and me, above the subway, below the heavens, where I stood still. Next is another memory of something that is it's engraved in my memory and in my heart, and you'll hear about that, the part of the bench. Just a key, a little clue. Vines and wind. Wet grass, wind, motors, children running. I am back to the night my father held my hand across the park where we sat. That cement bench still there. Vines draped over the line, my father's arm draped over my back, the wind, his soft voice, his words, distant chimes. I love you, your noble heart, indelible ripe as pears, his sweetness waiting to fall. My father gone, late fall. I was 12, too young to learn. He couldn't teach me to plant vines, to sow seeds. It just comes out naturally. Title, The Landscape Within. My mind is numb, like the marble slab of my father's grave. I wave to the past, but not the etched monuments on my mind where I find solace for all that remains is in an unlocked chamber, the safest chamber within my heart. I'd be a fool if I were to claim I knew the landscape, the topography, geological gathering of hardened memories and soft sand combined on that endless trail, like beads on a huichol pendant, smooth, colorful arrangement, rough but artful, made by humble hands, geometrically strung, one by one, crevassed and shrunken, awakened every time a bead falls off the hardened wax. I get down on my knees to find the tiny bead on the dark wooden floor, cedar like the coffin, the vessel my father's body embraced. At age 12, 1/3 the void, I felt stayed, empty. No one to hold my hand, to tell me how to find my way in the jungle of life. These days, where death roams the world disguised in the air, makes me feel that the life I knew, the one I know, those who lived it and those who are gone, left us when their time expired. But to die by a bullet or poison or bitten by a snake or shark, nor fallen from the tallest peak or mashed between twisted metal, but from breathing, just trying to stay alive. It's we're glad we're here, and I'm so appreciative for this opportunity to share perhaps some poems I don't always share in public because they're a little they really come out of my heart. Leaving home. It is time to depart, time to embark. New places, different faces. The future awaits beyond the horizon. Long gone are the days when I played marbles on the street, kicked the can, played ball with a stick. I remember how I used to play night games, riding horses, pretending to be armored, bearded men with long swords, saving weeping children and maidens from the Black Forest, where ravenous dogs chase gloomy silhouettes out of the dark. Child's game of fantasy lived around the treehouse. I would remember the brown house, the cul-de-sac, the earth songs mother sang, backyard birds chirping songs, dancing rain on the front deck, memories woven in my befuddled brain. The world looks safe from within that house. The time has come to sail away with the flying keel, steadfast into no man's land. And that is what I felt when I needed to leave home. I was working, going to college, and it just became a struggle. So I called my cousin, San Diego, and I made my way through, and life changed ever since then. One of the things that changed is that I eventually got married, but I married the wrong person. Nobody knows who you are dealing with until it's a little too late. In this case, the progeny that came from that marriage, it's an unfortunate tragedy all around. This is about that, but in particular, one person. Dissolved. I held my breath when I heard you were dead, never coming back to visit, to hang around. At night, the blinking lights show strange shadows, things only they disappeared know where they are. Your ashes are now in the water. The river, Gangamai, dissolved, merged, disintegrated. If blood could speak, it would yell a shriek. I'll tell your story, our story, stored in your wrists, ribs, where every punch you received is marked by a scar, and the tattoos on your tender skin punctured, marked. My breath, your ashes, rest in the bottom of the reservoir, deep where they will remain until the river runs dry. And my last piece, my last poem for you, is titled My Thanksgivings, because if it wasn't for the people around me, those who are still here and those that are gone, obviously I would not be able to write what I feel and share with others as far as my own personal way of communicating. My Thanksgivings. I give thanks to my seed-giving father, to my mother's healthy womb. Thanks to the teachers that taught me. Thank you for the house my father built. Thank you for all the trips to the beach. Thank you for all the sunsets, peach and colored skies, and the sunrises. Thank you to my son for seeking my advice. Thank you to all the good friends. Thank you to my daughter and my wife for tolerating my craziness. Thank you to Renato Leduc, the first poet I ever heard. Thank you to all my poet friends. Thank you for your help and encouragement. Thank you all the good people I've met. Thank you to Mother Earth for letting me walk on your skin. Thank you, Father, Son, and the rain. Thank you to life for giving me breath. And thank you for letting me be here with you.
Everyone, please give a round of applause for Raul Sanchez. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your work. And I have definitely questions for you. But first of all, I wanted to kind of thank you for sharing some vulnerable moments of your life and through your work. And for me, it felt like I was skipping through a timeline. You were mentioning childhood, then leaving home, a brokenheartedness. And so as you were reading, I felt like I was growing up alongside you or through the narrator of your work. So again, thank you so much for sharing. And what struck me personally was the television poem. You were talking about black and white television and just being an observer of history and JFK, Elmer Fudd for those younger viewers, Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, that crew. But I want to know, and this might be a tough question to answer, but I'm very curious to know, what has observing world events since black and white television to now taught you?
What has, can you, I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Oh
What was
yeah,
that?
sure. Observing just the world events since black
Oh,
and white television, yeah, until now. Like, what has being an observer of those worldly events taught you?
okay. Thanks. Yes, yes. And I have been thinking about that, and I have answered that question myself in my head, because at times I think about the experiences that we have had with the people we have shared our life with, from our youth to sorry, from our childhood to our youth to our adulthood. And now, of course, I'm older now. And sometimes I think that if it wouldn't have been for those valuable lessons or and experiences, that I would not know what to instruct to others, what to behave, how to behave myself, how to approach different people from uh, different generations, from different attitudes, from different ages. And I always find it interesting that despite the fact that we all look human with two ears and two eyes and two arms and two legs, right? We always, some people cannot go beyond the appearance, external appearance. So if they're gay, they criticize. If they're black, they're put down. If they're Mexican, it's the same thing. So if we see this in the kaleidoscope of everybody included in this world, we will be able to navigate a lot easier among in our society. So everything that is going on, all the shootings and the politics and the guy that was in the presidency before, and the people who are stubborn and they don't want to follow, it's like, it makes me think, how did they grow up? What kind of parents did they have? What gives them the authority to say, yes, I know we cannot be mandated. We're Americans. We're always gonna do whatever we want because that's the way we want it to be. No, adapt yourself to the norm. Right now, wear your mask, be safe, and respect everybody else. And the crimes against violence against the Asian people, everything else, it does affect me because I stopped thinking. I kept thinking about those things to the point where I just had to shut it off. No news, no radio, just play classical music or jazz or just numb myself out. So but it's giving me a different impression because obviously it's not the way things were. Those times were a lot easier. They were perhaps more gentler. People were more humble. People were learning. So 40 years ago, we never thought about this stuff that's going on now. Shootings and here and there, and the drugs and the people living on the street. Never ever would. The year that I moved to Seattle the first time, there was nothing of that. None.
Hmm.
So that was 1984. So and look, well, I moved away, came back from Florida, and then suddenly, 10 years later, all this propagation of homeless people and drugs, and where are we heading?
Hmm. I like that you described about being observant of the kaleidoscope of the world, and that's such a wonderful vision to maybe understand more about our world. And I kind of want to, talk more about a sliver of this kaleidoscope, and that's your work with young people. And you do have such a wonderful history working alongside young people, whether that's through Seattle Arts and Lectures, through their WITS program, Jack Straw Educational Project, or the Pongo Team Writing. And I really want to know, what intergenerational wisdom have young people taught you?
Mm. Well, I'll tell you, at the beginning of my residencies, I always, as I introduce myself or being introduced by the teacher, I always tell the kids, I said that, look, I'm here to learn from you. And they scratched their head. I said, yes, I'm here to learn from you because your vision of the world is from from this level up. For me, I'm looking at the world from this height all the way down. And I wish that somebody would have come to me to say, hey, Raul, let's check this out. Maybe you want to write about that. That's why I mentioned Renato Leduc, because he was the first poet I ever heard. I didn't even know he was a poet until my adulthood, I learned that. So I tell that to the kids, which is an easy way for me to break the ice. Tell them, I'm not here to tell you blah, 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 blah. Let's just work together. But you're going to teach me what I need to learn so I can approach the rest of the class and other of your friends better. And as far as Pongo in the Juvenile Detention Center, the trauma there is well, it's unbelievable. I mean, the kids that are there, and it all comes back to the upbringing, were they treated when they were growing up? Did they pay attention in their school? Were they given food? Were their parents addicts? Were they working too much? Or was there any tutor? Any? As we know, here in America, not everybody lives together. In Mexico, everybody almost lives in the same block. All families do that. Here, we know a brother-in-law lives in Poulsbo, and that's about it. My family, they all live in Mexico. I have a cousin in Boise, Idaho, but I don't see him. So it's just us. And because we are just us, we need to, see and move along with and try to understand and to instruct the kids. Not necessarily, I don't like to teach them, I like to tell them, no, I said, let's think about this. Okay, so what do you think? How would you change things? So then they get going, and they really, those kids that they think that they can write, oh, they're reading some amazing things, from the school, their friends, their video games, everything. So to me, it's an interesting way of see where they're at in middle school and those that are in high school as well. And of course, the difference between those that are in detention, way different. I mean, you'd see black and white, well, the total absolute yin yang. The kids in detention are worried about when my next court date is going to be, and when am I going to be released. When I get released, who's going to pick me up? Where am I going to live? The kids at home, if they are not bugged about their homework, or do your room, clean the house, wash your dishes, all that, go help your brother walk the dog, they don't get that instruction that they need. And those kids inside the detention, in detention, I don't ask them, but I can see that they probably didn't have that structure, that platform to move on and see that, okay, this goes here, each thing goes in its place, don't be dirty, be organized and be complimentary, respectful, and all that. Long answer.
No, that's a great answer. And I love the idea that when you approach youth, you just frame it, hey, I'm here to listen and learn from you. And I think that's a great strategy. And I just want to say thank you so much for investing in the young people in our communities. And for those that are in a similar way in our audience, that is, again, thank you, and support youth programs out there, because they need our guidance. And actually, we need their guidance as much as they need us. So everyone, please give a round of applause for Raul Sanchez. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Splendid.
A pleasure.
Thank you. I just wish we could go on and on. We had such amazing talent. But I just want to thank our readers for sharing their work with us. I felt that they answered for me what it means to grow up, or having to grow up. And as well as just sharing their ups and downs of adulthood. So as we kind of close up this series of growing up, I'd like to share a quote from writer Lois McCaster Bujold, who says, "Growing up, I have discovered over time is rather like housework, never finished." So thank you, readers, and thank you, audience. And it's just been a wonderful experience. And I'm just ready to hand it back to Stesha for closing remarks.
Thanks so much, DA, and thanks to all of the readers. That was just so wonderful tonight. And for those of you watching, if you're interested in reading more, the books from our readers are available at Open Books, and you can find more info about the individual readers. I'm going to post the links to their websites in the chat as well. As I mentioned earlier, we're interested in hearing from you. We'll post a link to a program survey in the chat and would really appreciate it if you take a minute after the event to fill that out. We'd love to hear what you think. And I'm delighted to let you know that our guest curator for the second half of the year will be Olaya Land, the founder and editor of the digital magazine Lioness. So you can check out the library's website, spl.org, for more information about that. We're grateful to everybody who made today's program possible. A huge thank you to DA for doing such an amazing job with this series as our inaugural guest curator. Be sure and follow his work, check out his other series, We the Indigenous and Fight for Our Lives. And I personally cannot wait to see what he does next. So thanks again, DA. You're awesome. Thank you so much to our program partners, Open Books, and thanks to our sponsors, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, the Seattle Times, and the Seattle Public Library Foundation. And of course, thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Good night.